I wanted to get your reaction quickly to Donald Trump's interview on 60 Minutes. We were chatting briefly before we began about the callous nature of Donald Trump, and that the cruelty is the point with a lot of what he says and does. And recently, he was asked about the horrific moment he had where he got a rally full of his supporters to laugh at Dr. Ford, who has said that that is the one piece of the trauma that stays with her and that hurt her deeply. What's your reaction to a president who is so consistently cruel day in and day out?
Well, cruelty is one of his hallmarks. That's just really a sad thing. It's a mean-spiritedness. We have to return to a sense of decency in our country. And basically what I say to our candidates and my colleagues, just let's talk about what we want to present to the American people. Lower health care costs, bigger paychecks, cleaner government. And the cleaner government piece electrifies everything else. But his, that's just to enlarge the issue. The opportunity that was there when Dr. Blasey Ford came forward with her truth was to respect the dignity of the Supreme Court and respect the dignity of a woman who came forward. The Senate Republicans did not serve either of those equities. They besmirched the Supreme Court, and they dishonored Dr. Blasey Ford and all women who come forward. And he, the President of the United States, was an enabler, just a terrible enabler. So I think when he said, I believe that when he says what he says, he just further rub salt into the wounds. It's just a terrible, terrible thing. But you know what? Forget him. Let's just win the election. We don't agonize over him. We organize over how we'll own the ground, to get out the vote, to win the election, to be a check and balance on him. As our founders intended.
And I want to talk 1,000% about the midterms, but before we get to that, something that you just said about him being an enabler for the cruelty is, I think, of particular relevance this week as we look at what's happening with Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who may have been killed in Saudi Arabia. I think that Trump's cruelty could possibly be serving as an enabler to oppressive regimes around the world. He is signaling to them that he's okay with that kind of casual violence, the way that he labels the enemy of the people, our own press corps. What has been your take on his response to this entire issue?
In terms of Saudi Arabia, I think I've always wondered why he went there as the first country to visit outside of the United States, of course, as President of the United States. All the other presidents back to Ronald Reagan went to Canada or one to Mexico, George W. Bush. So in our hemisphere, were there many friends and allies we could have gone to. So I was always suspicious that there was some kind of a financial transaction involved there, whether for his businesses or whatever, and I'm not convinced there isn't. And I think that plays out here now. Of course, he would say, we want to know the truth. We're not just going to accept we didn't have anything to do with it as an answer. And the fact that this administration is still attending this conference when so many people have said no until
including corporations even saying no.
Corporations saying no. So his relationship with Saudi Arabia is something. How about him saying, well, we have over $100 billion deal? Well, that's not what our country is about. We're about our values. And besides, if they want the quantitative advantage that our suppliers can bring to them, then they'll stick with the deal. If they don't, they won't. But we're not selling our souls down the river for a contract.